Welcome to Lunch with Tech Leaders, where we have engaging conversations about software development and cloud engineering with industry leaders and subject matter experts. These episodes are created by the Great Lakes Tech Leaders, an online community of technology practitioners. Please come join the conversation by visiting gltl.rbn.ai. Again, that's gltl.rbn.ai. Now strap in, because we're deploying to production in 3, 2, 1.
All right, welcome to Lunch with Tech Leaders. Today we're going to be talking about the impact of remote work on engineer hiring and retention. My name is Derek DeYoungie. I'm the host for today, and with me is our co-host, Tom Kowalski. Tom?
Hello.
Hello. All right, so we have a number of other guests as well. Tom, do you want to introduce them?
Yeah. Today we're going to be talking about the impact of remote work on engineering and hiring and retention. And to help us out with that, we have Sean Bullock. If you want to introduce yourself, I think it's your first time on here.
Hey, thank you. So thank you for having me. So my name is Sean. I work with a data analytics company called ServiceMob, and we've been fully remote since we launched 4 years ago. And so I'm totally happy to be here. This is a good topic. It's we leaders, it's a hot topic today.
All right. Glad to have you on. And we also have.
Oh, by the way, I'm the CTO there.
All right. We also have Kyle McAuliffe on, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi there, thanks for having me. I work at Aptiv as the chief engineer of Aptiv Connect Qualifier and have been leading remote teams in some fashion for probably about 7 or 8 years now.
All right, thank you. And we also have returning guests here, Lancelot Carlson, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I am a co-founder at a company called HealPay that does payment processing. We've been remote since the pandemic. We got rid of our office because it just didn't make sense. We had a couple people going in and we're trying hybrid, but no, eventually we just decided to completely pull the plug. So I'm a big fan of what Basecamp 37 Signals is doing with remote work, and they seem to be the pioneers. They not the pioneers, but they seem to have talked a lot about this stuff prior to everyone else because they started that way. So, yeah, those are my inspirations.
Yeah, excited to talk about it with y'all.
All right, fantastic. So I guess, yeah, let's just jump right into it. How has remote work impacted, hiring and retention in our experiences here? I can kind of get it kicked off. Like Lancelot, our company, Right Brain Networks, went remote during the pandemic, and was thinking about potentially opening an office back up or something to that effect, and just decided that with the way it's impacted our culture, just having the option to do like a co-working space available for our folks and to meet up every now and then was really just the right move for us. And as far as hiring, it's definitely had its own challenges. A lot of our engineers that have been hired throughout the pandemic, have been helping us sculpt our training process, because it's definitely changed over the years, and it's had being full remote has had quite a big impact on that as well. We've started using Discord a lot to kind of have that virtual, in the room with someone feel, just unmute and have some chatter and stuff. But
So have you started bringing people in for the onboarding, or are you fully remote with your onboarding now?
we definitely have, it's easier if they're able to make it in, but it's not necessary.
Okay.
Yeah, I think like
As
many
far-
others, COVID really did force a lot of people to adopt that remote style, whether or not it's something you had experience with before or wanted to do. When that did happen, I was in charge of an operations team, and with 24/7 365 coverage. We did try to do follow the sun model. So we had people across the world and had a bit more experience with remote teams and was able to pull upon some of the lessons learned there. Obviously, it was a much bigger impact to take into how we kind of set a standard for working remote during that period of time, and then extended it to a hybrid model now.
So you mentioned like follow the sun. Is that like the teams are all regionally together, or are you just saying you just have people all around the world?
We had people around the world. So we did have like a team in India, but we had someone in Belgium, one person in China, one person the West Coast, so that again you try to have everyone just work their normal working hours.
Okay. How about you all? Do you guys have, if you are following the sun, have teams, all around the world? Do you try to keep them regionally together so that when they are working, it's kind of overlapping hours, or is it just anybody,
Originally, like for us, originally we were in Southern California, and most of our team was local, even though we only occasionally came into the office together by choice. In the last 6 months, the whole team has spread out and moved to a different state somewhere in the country, mainly for cost of living reasons, because that state became expensive. So we still have like an office, like everybody still has an office. They go, no one works from their bedroom. I'm the only one who does, because where Battle Creek here, I can't find an office co-working place. But for us, we were regionally co-located, but now we're just spread out everywhere. And we have some developers in the Ukraine and over in the Philippines also.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's an interesting point, and that kind of leads us into the kind of like the retention portion. Is we've had a pretty good retention rate, and I think for a lot of companies, not just ours, the ability to kind of move wherever necessary is a positive thing for retention. Would you agree, John?
I'll go on that one first. Yes, my team, everybody has, I keep in touch with everybody in my team almost daily. They've all pretty much experienced significant morale boosts by moving, quality of life improvements. I think just, the traffic in LA and just the way things are, going remote, like everybody is so happy. Our productivity has shot through the roof since everyone moved.
Yeah, that's interesting. So as far as that goes, a couple stats here. Just throw out. GitLab conducted a survey, and 67% of developers said that remote work was a top priority for them when considering jobs. And 53 said they would consider leaving their job if they offered leaving their current position for something else that offered more remote work options. So it seems like that is the way of engineering, at least in this industry at the moment. So
how do you guys feel about some of the companies that are, kind of forcing everybody to go back to work?
I think they're going to see mass exodus. I mean, that's just anecdotal.
Yeah, I think it's happening right now. The company I currently work for has already gotten a few people from various companies that are starting to have people go back to work. So yeah, I think it's kind of a win if you are, fully remote.
I have an anecdotal story. There was a place that I go to eat locally, and the owner was talking about her husband that works at Merrill Lynch. They were trying to get everyone to come in after the pandemic, and they were about to enforce it. And when they tried, literally no one came in. Nobody. It was a mandate, and nobody came in, and it was because the people with the leverage, the highest performing employees of the company were just like, well, we're used to this now, and we're not going to do it. So it doesn't really make sense to for anybody else to. So when the leadership steps up and is just like, or at least the leadership under the leadership steps up and just says, no, we're not doing this, then everyone else can follow suit. But, even big stodgy banks, it's happening.
Yeah, I mean, GM decided to kind of walk back as well. They, put out a memo saying everybody's got to go back to work, and then it was on a Friday, and they ended up walking that back by Monday. And that was for like the office worker types. Obviously the factories still gotta keep things moving. Let's kind of segue here into advantages and disadvantages. What are some of the biggest benefits of remote work?
I'm vocal on LinkedIn about this one quite a bit. An experience that I had when I was working at one of the Fortune 500s. I had a back injury, and I was out for 2 weeks, and they were already talking about getting on disability and then putting friction between me and the rest of the team and all that kind of stuff. It was not a good experience. So I ended up leaving the company a couple months after that. But then about 2 years ago, here where I'm remote, I had a similar back injury, and for 7 months I couldn't walk or get out of bed. I couldn't sit, stand, or walk. I was in bed for that whole time, and I was still working, and there were no trust issues. The company, the whole team was supportive, and there was none of this. You didn't come into the office, kind of stuff. I was still productive. So I think one of the advantages, at least for me, that hits home really hard is, in a lot of ways, I think being forced to be in the office creates trust issues. Like if you're not in the office, you're not working. But when you're remote, you're not so visible. It's easier to see that, your productivity is still pretty high. So that sort of removes that potential for distrust.
Yeah, I think part of it too is really how it's enforced, right? You could have a remote job where you're expected to be at your computer from 9 to 5. I don't know if that is as much benefit as if you really try to focus on the benefits of being remote, having flexible work hours, right? You're trying to provide something that's more conducive for an employee's lifestyle. And so having things like flexible work hours, really focusing on establishing asynchronous methods for work and not having to have, meetings all the time and expectations on immediate responses, highlights
that
some of
definitely
that.
provides a work-life balance that I think a lot of people are getting used to, and really enjoy. They get much better quality, right? They can, be there to pick their kids up from school, and like these things that people would miss out on if they had a full-time job. That really just like Sean mentioned morale. Just gives people their lives back, right? Sean, you said you saw an increase in productivity. Can you expound on that?
Yeah. So, in there's some back thoughts behind that. And California is expensive, and where people moved to, it's not as expensive. People were worried about money, the rents increasing, all that stuff. So when we spread out, what happened is now people, I think the time zone helps a little bit because now we're offset by different hours, so we don't always have to be there at exactly the same time. But now people, they go out, they walk their trails, they go to the gym, they sleep longer, or they do stuff, and just not having to just not having the pressure of whatever it was living over in that state. People are, as they live their life, they work different hours, but what's happened is we figured out when and how we moved over to Slack huddles, which seems to be better than Zoom. Zoom was terrible for us, for our team it was.
Mm-hmm.
Slack huddles is better. You need a quick 5-minute talk, you do. And everything sort of combined together. And we went from our delivery cycles were about 3 weeks. They've gone down to about every 4 days. We push out now what used to be a few weeks. And when I talk with people, I'm like, what changed? And they just said that they restructured their life. They have less stresses that they did out in California.
So when you mentioned a huddle, right, and Zoom, those are very synchronous forms of communication. Do you have like certain times that everybody has to work and is kind of on to collaborate, or is it just kind of
Yes.
luck of the
So,
draw? Or yeah,
we only require everybody to overlap during 3 hours in the Pacific time zone equivalents.
okay.
And then the rest of it, we have 2 hours of mandatory meetings every week. And then the rest of it is just ad hoc. If you need to get into a huddle, you do. If you don't, you don't.
Do you see that? Does everybody else kind of see that? Like, kind of have like a mandatory? These are the hours that kind of everyone's working, or
We
Um,
expect people to.
oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Oh, that's fine. Go ahead, Sean.
No, go ahead. I thought that question was to me.
I'm asking, yeah, everybody else, or have you seen it in the
In
industry
general,
too?
yeah.
Other places?
For us, we expect people to be on Eastern time.
So like 9 to 5 then Eastern time, or is it like a certain set hours now, like a
Relative,
4 hour
like
window?
we're pretty flexible, right? People, a lot of our engineers will be like, "Oh yeah, I'll make it up later," or a lot of the time we have deployments that may need to be done at night, so people may just go get an errand done during the day or something like that. And it's, I think, again, just having that respect for your team and trust that Sean was talking about goes a long way. I think when people feel trusted and respected, they'll provide as long as they're provided for.
But so if you had like an engineer that's just like, yeah, I work better at night, right, and like just wasn't there all day long, would that be okay, or do you guys?
For us, no, because we're very client facing in the
Oh, okay.
consulting. You know.
How about you all?
For us,
Lance or
also,
Kyle?
to a point.
We got a hand raised,
Yeah,
Adam.
we have that as well. It is dependent on the team and the expectations where there may be set days where there's team meetings or time for collaboration, but then outside of that, especially working with people elsewhere in the world, you need to come up with the work that you have, kind of divvy that up, and at that point, unless there's questions, that's where that trust and consistency are really come in, that you can just expect that work gets done whenever is best for who's doing it.
Great.
The only time that we kind of had that is, so our folks in the Philippines or in the Ukraine, they effectively work at night and not during the day. So we have a process that works around that, and we manage that. But for the people that are in the US, we've had 2 people do that and it didn't work well. So we have a couple hours of mandatory overlap, but the rest of it, everybody's really good about communicating. So no one just disappears into the night, and it doesn't affect our schedules because of the communication. But when they're 100% at night or something, if we can't communicate during the day, that puts a wrench in the operations.
Yeah, that would make sense.
So do your people in the Philippines, or if they're on the other side of the world, are they on basically operate like a separate team, or do you have people that are on the same team that are in different time, like visit time zones?
We they're on the same team as anybody else. They're just in different time zones.
Okay.
We had a audience member join us. Adam, you had your hand up.
Yeah, hey guys, great conversation here. Really interesting. I was wondering, I wanted to get probably Kyle's and Sean's take on this, and that is, I think it's perfectly reasonable for a seasoned engineer to work remote, but how do you guys feel about like entry level or junior level people coming into the field? And think about you're coming out of college in 2023, looking for your first job, and you're working remote. You have no experience working in an office. Like, how do you ensure that your young engineers are developing and learning some of those skills that I think you might only learn from being in an office about, interacting with your coworkers, interacting with people in other departments, and how do you address that with junior level folks?
It's a great question. Again, I think a lot of it's based on what systems you have in place for asynchronous communication. So if you have certain go-to pages for each team on some sort of wiki that people can go to familiarize themselves with who does what. That helps a bit. I think just use this notion of situational leadership, where someone a bit newer, you're really you're directing a lot more. You're almost not I don't want to say micromanaging, but they require a lot more time and effort because they don't have the experience and background, and they require that early on until you get to the point where you can just delegate tasks to them. And so I think that there's not much of a difference between in person and remote with that. But the rest of the systems that are in place, they're not bumping into people at the water cooler, and so having something to facilitate those type of conversations, making sure that they're reaching out to people, trying to figure out the lay of the land, can be a bit more challenging. But it's not been roadblock by any means for us.
That's a really good question. Also, 3 of my developers started as interns, and it was their first job. And all of 3 were eventually converted to full time. But the way that we do it is, first of all, when through the vetting process, I try to find somebody that can match to the way that I run the team. I've only got 15 people in the company right now. So normally they get thrown into it, like my latest junior developer. His task was to rewrite our front end from React into Svelte. I mean, that's not a small task, and it's a junior we're talking about. But they get a tremendous amount of support by me and everybody in the company. And I think what makes the difference, because I've had one junior developer end up leaving because we didn't do it this way. That was a bad experience for them. Is what seems to work is we pair program, we check in, we give clear objectives, and the support system is really strong. But it's not like hand holding. We allow them to fail, we allow them to experiment, and we don't go by the 2 hour. If you don't have an answer in 2 hours, then ask for help. We give them a couple days, but we give them a lot of guidance, and that seems to make a difference. I've had people I get constant feedback at least once a month about how they like it. They're growing, they're doing a lot of things, they feel supported. And I check in with them too. I think another component is safety. Like if they get frustrated, I allow them to vent at me. Some of them have cussed me out, and I've had to pivot and change some of the way I do some leadership. But the safety there that they can speak up and not feel like they're being watched, and if they're not producing, then they're being evaluated. But I don't have that kind of a culture. But honestly, I think the secret for the way that we do it is just the support system that's in place.
I also noticed that with younger interns and whatnot, junior level developers, it is often the case that we have to pair them up with someone more senior pretty much the entire time. We approach pairing at our company as sort of like a hybrid thing where, if you need to, then, with the more mid-level senior developers, they'll do maybe 2 hours here and there and can schedule it with each other. But when it comes to junior level developers, really what you're talking about, when they get the value out of the experience, pairing is a pretty powerful tool that we use.
Yeah, we tried to instill like mentorship programs, where people that were coming in would kind of get paired up with someone who's been around for a while, and that seemed to work okay. But it's still a learning process.
Is that only for those coming in that are junior, or do you do like the paired programming and mentoring, right, for even somebody more senior, just to know like how things work?
I think it depends on the person that's that was hired, and so kind of play it by ear. But yeah, some of the folks that we hired definitely were had experience, but got a mentor anyways, just to be there. I think people enjoy feeling supported even if they don't need to use it.
Especially being remote, it gives a little bit of that human connection, and that might be lost through sitting across the states.
Yeah. Do you so where I'm currently working, there's kind of like they're more of a Zoom people. So they kind of just hang out in different rooms all day and yeah, can kind of like jump around and chat with different people. Do you guys kind of have that like an open room where everyone can hang out like a water cooler or that?
We do, yeah. We're using Discord. It's been really effective for us. What about everyone else?
Does it work
We
for
do a lot
everyone?
of-
Does everyone like it or?
I think it's starting to work for everyone. We've actually got Joe here. Joe, has it been working for the sales team?
Yeah, definitely. Works really, really well.
People kind of feel pressured to be in there? Like, what's like the feel of it? Like anybody just jumps in and
There's a core set of people that are more, don't necessarily want to say extroverted or whatever, but that enjoy it. And then there's folks that pop in and out. There's no pressure to be in those channels.
what about like other activities, right? Do you guys do things different, right? To kind of build team building, since everyone's remote, can't do like the normal activities that you do to kind of bring your team together. Do you guys have any special remote things that you do?
Yeah, and this
Like
might be
games or
different
something?
for the folks that are spread out, but we get together pretty regularly and do events.
Like physical, like hang
Yeah,
out?
physically,
Yeah.
yeah.
How about you all that are more spread out? Do you guys do anything? Or virtual events?
We do a couple
We
virtual
had,
ones. I mean, they're all elective, though. I'm not trying to force anyone into doing anything. We've had some success with trivia, with online escape rooms, and then even just coffee hours, where certain people can host a coffee hour every week, and those be doing their work, but anyone's welcome to kind of drop on in.
yeah, we haven't done any events or virtual events in the last few months. That's an area where we could probably improve. When we were co-located, it happened quite a bit.
Okay. Well, so another question here from the social angle of it. Cameras on or off? Right? Do you guys require it? Is it just, some people do it, some people don't? What are you guys' different policies or thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
Sorry, you go ahead.
Most of my team definitely prefers cameras off. And I think we respect that quite a bit. And I have seen teams that tried to push on cameras on to get that that feeling, and I don't. I've seen that kind of drift off in later on. Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, we've gone towards we're cameras optional, pretty much. No pressure one way or the other. But everybody tends to go camera off because it just saves the bandwidth because we keep getting dropped when they're all on. Some people are in low Wi-Fi in areas where there's low bandwidth. So it tends to be cameras off most of the time, but not always.
I'd say we're about 50-50 maybe. Again, it's cameras optional. Nothing's mandated. I know I always err on the side of having mine on. I found that when I do so, others are more likely to than if you join with it off. Everyone keeps it off. The only time I'll recommend them is for one-on-ones. I feel there's a lot that can be picked up through expressions and really seeing the person there. But again, it's not a mandatory thing. If somebody doesn't have the bandwidth, camera isn't good, isn't comfortable, there's no requirement.
Yeah, we're pretty much cameras off. We try to do it camera with sales meetings, but if someone wants to put their camera on and say hi, we encourage it, but it's definitely for the most part cameras off.
We had a team member once talk about when we were cameras on way back. Actually, it wasn't mandatory. It just everybody did it that way. He said it feels weird. It feels like everybody's eyeballs are watching him, and there was a lot of resonance there, and it started gravitating towards cameras off.
Interesting. I don't know. Like I worked
know
in an
I've
open
seen that.
office. Yeah, everyone's can look at you that way, right? But yeah.
I was gonna say I found the most discerning thing about cameras is seeing your own video. So like being able to turn that off has been helpful because that's what always tripped me up. Is seeing myself looking at me.
What about the talent pool is definitely much larger when you're working remote, right? Has that impacted anybody's diversity and inclusivity within their team?
Yeah, I think access to a larger pool always helps. Obviously comes with its challenges depending on the size of the company, what you're able to support, from a payroll, taxes, benefits standpoint.
Mhm.
And then even just that, there's been in the news quite a bit recently, people working remote will travel to other countries or states, and those countries and states are starting to come after them for taxes. And so there's been a bit more, at least where we work, lockdown on what is and isn't possible for period different places and where your kind of home base to be.
Yeah, for us, we were able to start hiring. We enjoy being a Michigan company. It's kind of part of our culture. But being able to have access to that wider pool is absolutely been beneficial. We've got some really great engineers that are out in Lansing, who would definitely not be traveling hours a day for a position, but that not only benefited us because we've got some great talent, but it benefited them because they're starting to they have more options available in a workplace.
Yeah, we're a Michigan-based company, so most of our people are Michigan. We like the option of having to be able to hire people outside, but really haven't needed to yet besides our marketing person. And she's been great. So I think it always benefits a company to have that, being, and obviously it helps to be able to compete to hire somebody because
Mhm.
if you can offer remote, then in that flexibility, people definitely appreciate it and gravitate towards your company rather than other companies that are making you come in.
Yeah, I can I can say from a being hired standpoint. So recently, I was looking for a new position full time, and I was only looking at remote. And sometimes I'd be thrown off if a job wasn't. I was like, wait a minute, this isn't remote, or I don't I don't see it in there. And so yeah, that from my perspective, it was the only thing I was looking at. So yeah, if you weren't hiring remotely, it was I'm sure it's very shorting the job pool. Employee pool.
Yeah, we get applicants from all around the country because we're known to be remote. But one of the first questions everybody asks is, "Do I have to come into the office?" And when you get to talking, you just know that if the answer is yes, then the conversation won't go any further. As far as the advantages, though, we even though we were remote from the beginning, all of our staff was actually local. And half of our company is the referrals of our highest performing engineer. So they were friends to begin with. But now that everybody is spread out, I'm starting to get referrals from different employees. And even I've tried to reach out to some people right here in the GLTL group. We don't have an opening right now, but when we do, I suspect we're going to have I think it's going to be really great being able to reach people from anywhere that they're at.
Yeah, I think the cat's kind of out of the bag, at least for software engineering, cloud support, stuff like that. I don't see you know I think a lot of companies thought this would be a temporary thing, but I really just don't see it going back to everyone being in an office full time all the time. So, and it sounds like you all have correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys are kind of seeing the same effect.
What are your thoughts on what Zuckerberg has been saying about the people that he's hired prior to this remote work being better than the people that he's hired, the new people that haven't, experienced the culture that he had?
Personally, I think there's probably a lot of weight to that, right? When you're working in these big facilities, there's a lot to that camaraderie and feeling of um, the what's been provided by the company. So I've never been in one of those positions. But I would trust that there's probably something to that.
Yeah, I feel like it's really how you handle working remotely, how you establish that culture. I'm sure it's a lot harder for companies that started off in the office, and but I think companies that start remote first and have a really great culture that's remote first, I don't think it's a problem. But yeah, I could see it being a problem with a lot of companies that were strong the other way, right? And hard to transition.
I also think that there's a certain personality type that would, the people that want to go work for Facebooks and, places like that, they probably do enjoy going to the office and being around others. And, I think that's kind of just, I wouldn't say that everybody is super gung ho about always being remote. I think there's definitely people that would enjoy going back to a nice facility and just getting away and separating their work life.
Yeah, and I know for my team, we came into the office sometimes because we wanted to. No one really had a problem coming into the office. What they had a problem with was the commute.
Mm-hmm.
So
Teleporters.
you're gonna get that, like, people going into Facebook. I can't speak for everybody because, once you have the flexibility and the way to manage your schedule remote, I mean, your whole life changes. But I can imagine that, it's the commute that people don't want to do. That's probably one of the biggest reasons, at least for, being out there. But, yeah, but being in the office is, when you're forced to do it, though, sometimes you don't understand why. And you don't want to go back to it once you didn't have to.
Right. The commute's an interesting thing. I know that like Netflix, for example, used to have a bus that would go from San Francisco down to Los Gatos, and so people could get work done while they're on their commute, and that saved them their part of their day. If you're commuting an hour or more, that's multiple hours of your day that are just gone to you can have some of that back, right? Family time and what have you. Personally, it sounds like the folks in the room at least are seeing some advantages to remote work, and that's great. That's positive. It sounds like we've all got a number of different ways to deal with the challenges of, and that being our communication tools, obviously, and the way we go about managing and bringing culture into our organizations. Do you guys read anything on like leadership around remote work or anything like that, or have seen anything? I would love to hear more about others who are managing remote work teams, because education is a forever process. So I have yet to find any myself that I've really enjoyed, but I was curious if you guys have.
I'm not sure they mentioned too much about leadership, but I know the rework book is pretty good, at least to give you a template for how to run a remote company. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure about leadership stuff.
What's the name of that book again?
Rework?
Rework?
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Lancelot.
Yep.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining us today on the GLTL on Work with Tech Leaders. This was the impact of remote work on hiring and retention of engineering teams.